The Mid-America Veterans Museum is a 501c3 nonprofit business. The museum would not exist without the donations of our generous community. Your donations ensure the museum continues to share and preserve the stories of our veterans. Would you like to be part of something special? To donate, visit mavm.org and click on Donate. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only. The primary purpose of the Operation Insight podcast is to educate. The views, information, or opinions expressed on the Operation Insight podcast are solely the views of the individuals or guests involved and by no means represent absolute facts. Operation Insight does not accept responsibility for their views or comments. The Operation Insight podcast may at times cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to suicide, abuse, violence, severe mental illness, sex, drugs, and alcohol addiction. You are advised to refrain from watching or listening to the Operation Insight podcast if you are likely to be offended or adversely impacted by any of these topics. Neither the company, host, director, or the guest shall at any time be liable for the content covered, causing offense, distress, or any other reaction. Welcome to the Operation Insight podcast from the Mid-America Veterans Museum with your host, Jason Galvin, and co-host, Sergeant Ethan Gross.
Welcome back, family. Thank you for joining us once again. Tonight we have a special guest, Mr. Jim Manahan. Mr. Manahan served in the Army from January 13th, 1975 to January 12th, 1978. And then joined the Navy Reserves here in St. Louis from April 1st. I guess that wasn't a Fool's Day kind of prank there. April 1st, 1979, and then he ended his service with the Navy Reserves March 31st, 1981. Jim, I've been fortunate enough to hear your story through our museum's Veterans History Project, but I'm really grateful that you decided to come back and share it with Jason and I on Operation Insight. So thank you for being here and welcome.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me.
So I know the answers to some of these questions, Jim, but our audience doesn't. So start by telling us where you're from.
I'm from Florissant, Missouri. That's where I grew up. Came from a family of 7. My sister is the oldest, and I have five other brothers. We were, I would say, middle class Irish Catholic family, and the only one that wasn't in the military was my youngest brother. I guess he saw how it affected all of us.
Sure. You had some brothers that were Marines, is that correct?
Yes. My oldest brother was a Marine in Vietnam in 1966, 67. And then my older brother right above me was in Vietnam, and I'm going to say 70, 69, 70, 71, I believe.
What kind of effect did that have on you as a child?
I'll tell you what, my oldest brother, I was 8 years younger than him, and I used to write him letters when he was in Nam. He was stationed in Da Nang, and he saw the shit, so to speak.
Yeah.
He used to write back letters to me and tell me about his friends that were killed by mortar attacks. And at the time, being a little kid, I didn't think much about it.
Sure.
I felt bad, but, you didn't really know death at 10 years old. So, yeah, it was a shock. But he was definitely my hero, my oldest brother.
What types of things would you write in your letters to your brother? Was it mundane kind of stuff?
It was silly things.
Yeah.
I mean, that a 10-year-old kid would write, like my friends and how many pull-ups I did, or if he taught me how to pole vault and high jump and do a lot of track and field stuff. So I was always bragging if I could, get one up on them.
Now, that was the era of snail mail. I mean, they didn't have any.
Oh yeah, exactly.
There were no cell phones, no videos,
Right.
nothing like that. No internet.
Exactly.
So how long did it take for each correspondence to get back and forth to each other?
I would say a couple weeks at the minimum, because I believe at the time, because Vietnam was going pretty hot and heavy in the mid-'60s, and I think a lot of the mail was delayed because of the war.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
when your brother returned from Vietnam, tell us about that experience.
well, I remember prior to him coming back, we received a letter from the government, actually the Department of Navy, I think, which is the Marine Corps. And it warned my mom and dad of all the things that you have to be careful with a Vietnam vet returning to the States. And some of that was like fireworks. One of them I thought was kind of humorous was not to have any rubber toys or rubber ducks. I to this day, I'm not sure why, but it made my mom cry when she read the letter, because she was like, what have they done to my son?
Sure, that I have to treat him so differently.
Exactly.
It's strange, Jason. I have never heard of that kind of pre-welcome letter.
Yeah, I've never heard of that either. I've literally never heard of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
That's
was
really fascinating.
Do you know if your family still has a copy of that letter somewhere?
God, I don't know. That was so many years ago.
Yeah. It would just be interesting to see and maybe have in the museum.
Very interesting.
Anyway.
Could probably find that on the internet, I would
Probably.
imagine. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
did you guys have sort of a family meeting prior to his arrival then to
Yeah.
prepare?
We did.
What do you remember about that?
I remember my mom just saying, what the things that he went through, and said, explained some of the items in the letter, and said, you have to be careful, don't scream loud, don't make loud noises, don't bang on something loud, because this could really affect him and take his mind back to where he was in Vietnam. And
Were there ever any episodes once he did return?
not that I recall. He was pretty hardcore. I mean, he was a poster child for a Marine Corps.
So he kept it all in.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
exactly.
would have noticed it.
Tough. He was tough as nails, or at least that's the exterior
Sure.
that he had. Yeah, I don't remember anything specific. He went out to California not long after he got out of Marines, and then we rarely saw him. I mean, we didn't visit him, but he would come home occasionally.
Sure.
But I don't know if it was an escape for him or if he had some PTSD stuff going on. Back then you didn't talk about it. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Did the brother that you knew prior to his deployment change compared to the brother that came back?
absolutely.
In what ways?
He was more focused, I guess. He was kind of a free-willing, willy-nilly type prior going in. He had a tight group of friends. I knew his friends, and I mean, we were all pretty tight, even though I was younger. But then when he got back, he was like zero focused on things.
Sure.
And I remember he bought a 68 Roadrunner with his leave money, which, back then that was probably one of the most popular vehicles they have.
Yep.
Did he still kind of have that brotherly personality? Were you able to kind of chum up with him, or was that gone?
Yeah. And he showed his appreciation. He said, you got me through some tough times, Jimmy.
Your letters.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
That probably made you feel really good.
Yeah. Because I used to draw cartoon pictures on the letters.
Yeah.
I was pretty good at drawing cartoons. And he told me after a few letters, he said that you better not do that anymore because I'm taking a lot of heat from the people in the Quonset hut. I guess they were thinking they were from a girl or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us about the evolution from that period of your life to you becoming interested in joining the military?
Well, yeah. Let me talk for a minute about my other brother, Mike,
Please.
who's right above me in age.
Sure.
He went to Vietnam and had a totally different experience than my oldest brother. He was a personal ambassador to the Ellsworth Bunker, a Marine Guard. And he said, I was the only one that could carry a machine gun, or, several of us could carry machine guns.
Sure.
And then, I'd ask him about his job, and he said, we'd go up on the top of the roof at the embassy and burn classified materials at night and smoke doobies and get higher in a kite. Then we watched arc lights in the distance, all the battles going on.
Wow.
I was
like fireworks, basically.
Yeah, this
for him.
is not like my oldest brother. It was kind of comical, actually. And to be honest, he wasn't a good Marine.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up about the two brothers and that strong dichotomy.
Yeah, that's interesting.
How did they configure that as brothers? Did they chat about their experiences?
No, my oldest brother was like the leader. Okay. He wanted to be like my dad. My dad was a war hero. And I even brought some stuff for you guys later. But, my dad was a war hero, and my brother looked up to him, and he wanted to be just like my dad.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, tell
us about your dad.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about your dad, Jim.
Well, my dad was actually in the National Guard. I found out through Ancestry prior to joining the war effort in 1940, right around 1940. And he was actually stationed at Pearl Harbor when the Japanese bombed December 7th, 1941.
Wow.
He was in the barracks, and he told me, he said, all the, his fellow airmen were talking about all the noise and bombs going off. And he said, damn Navy, what are they doing target practice in this time in the morning on a Sunday morning? It was real.
You had no idea.
Nope. Not until they went outside the barracks and they saw, the Japanese bombers and the Zeros he said all hell broke loose. He said it was unbelievable. But he survived, thankfully, or I wouldn't be here. And then he flew on B-17s. He was a bombardier and turret gunner.
Oh, wow.
And the pictures I have of him are in the waist gunner position on a B-17.
Tight area in there.
Which is like the side, where the doors were open. And he's right next to two twin 50 caliber machine guns. Mm-hmm. And then I found on newspapers.com, there was another article in there. This was like in 1943, 44. The war was still going on, but not so much in the Pacific as it was in Europe at that time. And he was in England, and they had a picture of him, which I brought. And in the bottom of the picture, in parentheses, it says Charles W. Manahan, ball turret gunner.
Nice.
That is one of the most dangerous positions to be in an aircraft.
Oh, absolutely.
I think the survival rate was 30%.
Very low.
So 70% of the people that were in that position died.
They were the first. It was hard to get in and out of that position too.
Right.
And just so our audience understands, Jim, explain for us. My understanding, I think, is because you're on the belly of the plane.
Exactly.
So you're very exposed.
Right.
All that flak coming up at you. Yeah. And do you know how many missions he flew? His squadron held the record for combat hours, 450 hours in the Pacific. Wow.
They shot down 61 Zeros, destroyed several battleships, several aircraft carriers. I mean, it's all in the newspaper.
That is amazing.
He wasn't kidding about a war hero for a dad.
Definitely a hero.
That's an incredible story.
And I'm sure he had, steel. I mean, he was made of steel. It sounds like, you know what I mean. That's what I was trying to say.
He was badass.
That's what it sounds like. You got to be badass to be up in that ball turret.
Yeah. And to do the job well.
Nerves of steel is what I was trying to say. Nerves of steel. Couldn't get that out, but man, that is awesome. And they don't make them like that anymore.
No.
But that's what gave my brother Chuck.
I can see that.
Yeah, the desire, and he wanted to be just like him.
So, okay, so you have your brother Chuck. Was Dave? Did I get that?
Mike.
Mike, I'm sorry. You have Mike, and such a dichotomy, such a difference.
Right. Totally different
Where do you
experiences.
fit in to that spectrum?
Well, I told you Chuck was my hero, so I wanted to join the Marines out of high school, actually before I got out of high school. So I went down to the Federal Building, not Mart Building it was called, on 12th and Spruce, and they had a program called PLC, which is Platoon Leaders Class, and that was in the Marines. And if you scored, good enough on this aptitude test, you get opportunity to go to that class. And what you did is went through their training, whatever their scheduled training was, and afterwards you would be commissioned a second lieutenant and go to Vietnam and lead a platoon. This was 1970. So Vietnam was still very much in play.
They needed the bodies.
Right. My dad found out. He was not happy. It was, we weren't getting, our butts beat at that age, but he pretty much said, you're going to get in the car, we're going down there, and we're going to un-enlist you.
Were you 17 at that time?
I was 16 or 17.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, I think I was 17.
Okay.
And
you were determined.
I wanted to go to Vietnam. Both my brothers came back alive, all their parts, not wounded or anything, which was foolish, in retrospect. But at the time, I was gung-ho.
Sure.
So he unenrolled me, and then we had a come to Jesus meeting where he said, you're smarter than your brothers. He said, I don't want you to be a jarhead like them. He said, pick another service, to the Air Force, Navy, Army, whatever. And I said, okay, well, I said, what am I going to do, Dad? I said, I don't have any skills. I'm still in high school. He said, finish high school. We'll send you to junior college, see what you want to do, see what you're good at, and then go from there. So that's pretty much what I did. I graduated early so I could get out of high school because I didn't like it. And then in 71 mid-year, I guess it was actually January 72, I went to Florissant Valley Community College. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that attracted me at the time was like a liberal arts degree, 2-year degree. So I did that, and I actually had a liking for foreign languages and an aptitude farm, apparently. And I took German, and my instructor said, I've got a Russian class too. Would you like to take Russian? I was like, sure. So I took.
Why not?
Yeah, I got up to intermediate German, and then I started elementary Russian. Well, by the time I got out of my second class, I had graduated. I had enough hours. I had 64 semester hours, so I graduated. And that's when I got serious about doing something in the military, regardless of what degree I had.
Sure.
I thought that would keep me out of being 11 Bravo, ground pounder.
Sure.
Yeah. So my dad was all on board for that. He was really, he said, you'll do good, Jimmy. Just try to go to language school. You did good in language. See if you can get in. Yeah. Talk to the recruiter. And so I went in the delayed enlistment program in November of 74 because I knew I was graduating. In fact, I think I had graduated. And they said, when do you want to go in? And I said, well, I want to wait till after the holidays and spend time with the family. So in January is when I went in, January 75.
This is a funny moment for me, Jim, hearing you tell this story, because I had a somewhat similar experience when I joined. My parents were not on board. That's another story for another time. But when you had that moment with your father, I'm really curious what was going through your mind. Did you take it as an insult that he wasn't letting you do what you wanted to do, or was it kind of a compliment? He's telling you, you're the smart one, I don't want you to take this path. How did you take that advice?
I absolutely took it as a compliment. In fact, that was the first time that I, kind of more or less bonded with my dad, because I was scared shitless.
Sure, yeah.
Those are the terms that we used back then.
And it's funny, this difference. I mean, you could not wait to get out of high school. You wanted to go to Vietnam, of all places. And then, 3 years later, well, let's go after the holidays. You know? It's a bit of a difference.
Gotta get mom's home cooking.
Yeah, I think he talked some sense into me.
Yeah, it sounds like.
I'm sure we had some heart-to-heart talks, and he was right. I mean, look, in 2020, 2020 is,
sure.
You look at it, it's a whole different ball game. But I was really, I felt good after we talked about it. And then after I talked to the recruiter, the only thing I didn't like was they said, they gave me that DLAT test, that language aptitude test, and I scored pretty high on it. And they said, well, you'll go to language school in Monterey, California, and so we'll send you to Fort Ord for basic training because it's right within short distance. And then I was like, well, am I going to get German or Russian? And they said, we can't tell you. You won't know until you get out of boot camp. And I was like, it's got to be one of the two.
What'd you end up with?
Korean.
Not even remotely close.
Oh, my God, I remember that. It was almost like that scene in, what was that, Full Metal Jacket.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. Where all the Marines were looking at the board, and Sergeant, I can't remember his name, but anyway, he was telling the recruits or the Marines, he said, you're going here, Private Joker, you're going here, and and I was thinking that's how I felt because I was like, Korean, come on. I don't know anything about Korean.
Was it a tough language to learn?
Yes, it was.
I believe it.
Especially after having German and Russian under my belt. It's a whole different ball game.
Right.
Thankfully, it's not a tonal language, but after about a month at DLI, I was really questioning if I was going to make it. I mean, me and everybody else.
Right.
There wasn't anybody that said, oh, this is easy, because we had the Arabic, Vietnamese, which was kind of petering out at the time, Korean, Mandarin Chinese, all those students, and everybody was struggling. So,
what was the Korean geared for? I know. Was there a specific gear they were looking to use that language learning for?
Well, this was 75, so I would say they were just trying to, build up their forces of linguists, or we weren't really linguists in a sense, but we were what we called voice operators, voice intercept operators.
Okay.
And I guess they were just trying to build them up in the country. So they'd have both Korean, South Korean interpreters, and then the American counterparts.
Now, were the instructors Korean? Or?
Yes. Okay. They were all naturalized
speakers.
Koreans.
Okay. Gotcha.
I want to step back just for a bit. And Jim, you already know this about me. I attended DLI as well. I was fortunate enough to go there. While I was there, I fell absolutely in love with California for its beauty and in some respects, its culture. Just give us a real quick tutorial about Fort Ord, because I'm kind of fascinated by that post. It's where Clint Eastwood did his basic training.
Exactly.
So tell us about your experience there. You're on the beach for basic training.
Well, it didn't seem that way at 3 o'clock in the morning when the drill sergeant came in, banging trash cans and screaming everybody out in the parking lot. We had, for some reason, he was mad. His date didn't go right or something. We had only been in boot camp maybe a week and a half. So he told us all, fall out. We fall out. It was misty, rainy. It was probably 50 degrees. We were cold. We were in our underwear, T-shirts, boxer shorts. And he made us do push-ups and squat thrusts. And I was like, man, I think I I made the wrong decision. It did get better, but it wasn't all great. There was another instance, maybe I was in 2 weeks, or I was headed to the mess hall for breakfast, and I saw a drill sergeant out the corner of my eye, and he goes, "Private," he goes, "what are you doing?" I said, "Going to the mess hall, drill sergeant." And he goes, "You don't ever walk to the mess hall. You run to the mess hall. Drop 20. And then so I dropped, and then I wasn't screaming them loud enough, so he kept saying, louder, louder. So after I did the push-ups and stuff, he said, "Don't let me ever catch you walking to the mess hall again."
Wow.
So that was kind of comical, but after about 3 weeks, I was starting to get accustomed to, what they were putting us through,
Sure.
trying to make, men of us or whatever. And I actually started to enjoy it. I kind of, grew close to the drill sergeant. He was a black individual from, I think he was from Atlanta or something, but he went to Vietnam. He was actually with the 2nd Infantry Division too. And we just kind of befriended each other, not publicly so much, but he was complimenting me a lot because I lost 30 pounds in the boot camp.
Wow.
And he said, "Manahan," he said, "you win the prize for losing the most weight." And this was like right before graduation.
30 is impressive.
That is impressive.
They had to give me new clothes because my uniform didn't fit anymore.
Wow. And you probably weren't that big when you went in.
I was 175.
Wow. And you went down to 145?
Yeah.
Lean and mean.
Holy cow.
Then my wife said, "You're too skinny. You need to gain weight." But that's a different story. But I actually liked it. To get back to your point, I have no regrets about it. I tried to do the best I could. Some of the fellow soldiers were saying I was, too squared away, too, strict in my code. I wanted to have my shoes perfectly shined. I wanted to have my medals perfectly shined. When we did rifle inspections, I wanted to make sure that I got top, compliments for having a clean rifle. And it was just, that was my mentality. That's just, I'm kind of a perfectionist, and I still am to this day. So,
yeah.
So it played well into my hands because that's what they were looking for.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for people squared away soldiers.
Absolutely.
Sounds like your older brother had that kind of influence on you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He sure did.
Yeah.
So Fort Ord, as you had said, Jim, is a rock's toss basically to DLI. It's like a 15-minute drive. Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about that transition. Did you just go straight over to the DLI post after basic training?
Sure did. Yeah. I believe they bussed us over there and then, got us squared away in the barracks and stuff.
And now Korean, at least currently, contemporaneously, it's a 1.5 year long course. What was the length back then when you were?
It was 47 weeks, but we graduated in, I believe it was 43 weeks.
Wow.
43 or 44. Now,
That's
they said it
intensive.
was because
Yeah.
all of the students were proficient, but
They were just
I
kind of
don't know.
rushing you through a little bit.
it might have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, might have been a little bit of push.
Did you feel ready by the time you graduated?
Yeah, I felt pretty confident. I scored a C3, R3. I don't know if you guys had that too.
It's slightly different now.
Yeah. And I received a certificate for outstanding scholastic excellence, and I graduated with honors.
Wow.
So, I felt pretty good about it.
Yeah. That's
The only
pretty
thing
impressive.
is I have to remind people, when they ask me, "You still remember Korean?" I'm like, yeah, I remember some war terms, but
Sure.
it wasn't so much conversational Korean that we were learning. It was a lot of war, military type jargon, not the, "Hi, how are you? How was your date?" and blah, blah, blah. It was more like, missiles, artillery, tanks, things of that nature.
Things
That's what
that
they
are-
focused on.
Things that are important to catch on a radio transmission.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
you didn't hear too many casual conversations.
Sure, yeah.
They weren't smoking doobies on the roof, burning
No.
stuff.
No.
And now I want to get this in, before we leave DLI and beautiful Monterey, tell us, you know the story I'm looking for, but tell us about your time in California, just when you had downtime.
Okay. One of my, I've had several favorite periods of time in California. My first one was boot camp. I forgot to mention. One of the soldiers that I befriended was from Hayward, California. And he said, hey, on a weekend pass, he goes, why don't you come home with me? And I was like, okay. So I went with him, and he had a Porsche. I don't know if I mentioned
you
this
didn't tell me
time.
this story.
Yeah. So we went out on the 101 freeway, and he showed me what a Porsche
And
can
cranked
do.
it.
Yeah.
That's great.
Nice.
Now, this was 75, so, things are a lot different now.
Did you go down Big Sur? Is that what you guys did? Along the coast?
We actually did do some sightseeing at Big Sur and Carmel.
Okay.
Carmel by the Sea. But yeah, it was just, and his parents were super nice. And then he took me down to Fisherman's Wharf.
Yeah.
And then we didn't go to Alcatraz, but we were sitting on a rock, and we had somebody take our picture, and Alcatraz was in the background.
Sure.
So that was pretty cool. Fisherman's Wharf was, phenomenal.
Yeah.
But then getting to DLI, I had some other friends.
And a little bit more freedom once you get to DLI.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It was almost like too much freedom. I had a friend that was from Memphis, and his mom came down and said, I want to take you boys to a restaurant up in Carmel that Clint Eastwood owns. It was called Hog's Breath Inn.
Sure.
So she took us there, took us sightseeing. I mean, it was just, it was a cultural shock to me. I hadn't been out of the Midwest, so this was like the panoramic, beautiful countryside, the ocean, 101 freeway, and I think it was Highway 1 along the coast, wasn't it?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. We went up there, Big Sur and Carmel. And
Basically every other car commercial is
Right.
shot
Yeah.
at Big Sur.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. We did that. And then at some point I was at DLI. Another friend of mine, invited me out for the weekend. He said, hey, we're going to a concert in San Jose. And I was like, okay. And, he had some friends pick us up. He was a hippie. I mean, not, after military, but his friends were hippies. Yeah. They picked us up, and, they're like, hey, dude, we're going to San Jose, and, we're going to stop and get some beer and load up a cooler and all this. So we did, and much to our consternation, there was security, when we're walking into San Jose Stadium, and they made us dump all the beer out.
Oh, man.
I know. And we were like, come on, man, can't we just save a couple cans? And they're like, nope, dump it.
Wow.
We didn't even get it back. So, but anyway, that was the first outdoor concert that I went to, and I saw Rod Stewart, who was a newcomer, Peter Frampton, newcomer out of San Francisco, and War.
Nice.
I don't know if you've heard of War, but yeah. So
I just have to ask because I love Rod Stewart. Was that fresh off of Faces? Was he no longer with that group?
It might have been.
Okay.
Because I don't recall them being a group. I
Gotcha.
mean, a big group together.
I'm a big Rod Stewart fan, so well, thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that.
that was awesome.
The reason I wanted to ask Jim about that is because I don't think a lot of people, even in the military, understand this. So DLI, and obviously there's other military bases in California. I've always found that such a strange thing to configure in my mind. California is such a free kind of wheeling state, and you had even mentioned hippies. That's kind of what people think of when they think of California. And then you have these soldiers running around and having fun, which, you're allowed to do and you should do on occasion. I've always found that kind of fascinating, those two worlds kind of colliding in California.
I always hated going into Oakland or San Francisco airport.
Sure.
Because we were harassed.
Wearing uniforms, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By that Hare Krishna or something.
Oh, sure.
One of those movements. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
We were constantly harassed. And so you almost tried to find a way to get around them, so they wouldn't harass you.
Yeah.
Because it was silly stuff, I I mean, we weren't in Vietnam.
Sure.
So we weren't baby killers.
You're just freshly trained.
Right.
Yeah.
So
okay. So tell us about the very first duty station. You have DLI. AIT was in Texas. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. And then, so tell us about your very first duty station.
Okay. I have to say one more thing about DLI.
Oh, sure.
I got married.
Oh,
I was in DLI.
Got to mention that. Yeah.
In December of 75. I got married before I graduated.
And that was in Monterey?
Yeah.
Where did you guys go to have your wedding?
Well, actually, I got married in Florissant.
Okay.
My hometown.
You flew back. I gotcha.
And then we went to our honeymoon, which was at the airport Marriott. That's what we did back
Soldiers
then.
pay.
Yeah, exactly. Military honeymoon.
That's right. You get the free breakfast.
Every time we go past that Marriott, I go, remember that? She goes, how could I forget?
Yeah. You should stop reminding her of that.
You owe her a second honeymoon if you haven't already.
So, I got married, but she stayed here. In Florissant.
Sure.
And then, like you said, I got transferred to San Angelo Air Force Base in the voice intercept operator course.
Sure.
And she came along. She actually came down there after I got settled in and everything. So we found some off-base housing, and that's where I stayed for 7 or 8 weeks, whatever it was.
And that's the training where essentially you're melding your language skills that you just freshly learned with what the purpose of having the language is, essentially, for the military.
Right. And the equipment, that's where we learned how to operate the equipment.
Yeah.
So, that was very, very telling and very educational, because that's where it kind of brought everything together.
Sure.
This is our mission. When we get to Korea, this is what we need to do.
Yeah.
So
learning the language is not just for fun.
Right.
You're
exactly.
going on the Army's dime. They're going to make it worth their time.
I got a question for you. What was the equipment like? What were you guys using?
It was like reel to reel.
Okay.
You remember, back in the 70s, 80s, a lot of people listen to music. They listen to it on the reel to reels. Mm-hmm. That's basically what ours was. It wasn't very sophisticated at all.
Oh, wow.
But it was fine as far as audio quality went. I mean, we could hear pretty good. And when we taped the North Korean radio traffic, it reproduced really well.
Did you feel like that was a good fit once you finished your AIT? Did you feel like, okay, this is what I wanted to do?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Because I felt I was serving my country. I was doing what I was trained, because they, put a lot of money and time into me. And I wanted to do the best that I could do. So
you finish AIT, you leave San Angelo. What's next after that?
Well, wife flew back home. I went to Korea. I think initially they sent me to Camp Humphrey in Pyeongtaek, which is the largest base in Korea for Army soldiers. And I don't think I was there long at all, the best I can remember. And then they sent me up north to Camp Casey, which was in Dongjucheon, Korea, which was about 13 miles south of the DMZ.
Oh, wow.
Right there on the front lines, basically.
Yeah. We could have been a little closer, which I'll tell you about, but that was pretty close for comfort.
So give us, and I'll admit I'm a little ignorant when it comes to this. The Korean War is often called the Forgotten War. Give us an understanding of, so the Korean War ends, I think, 1953, if I'm remembering correctly.
Right.
You're arriving there 1976?
Yes.
Tell us kind of what is going on at that period in Korea.
I think, the way the Koreans responded to us was of gratitude, that the Americans were there helping them.
So that sense was still kind of in the air.
Yes.
Okay.
I never felt any animosity toward me, never got called names, derogatory or otherwise. In fact, I befriended a bunch of Koreans. They were good friends of mine. We did utilize their services. We had I forget what they called them. I want to say a hooch boy, but I don't think that was the name. But they pressed our uniforms, starched them, shined our boots. Pretty much did everything that we should have been doing. But for $2,
Absolutely.
I don't blame you.
And we were supporting the local economy by doing
Absolutely.
that.
That's what he had to tell himself to make him feel better.
Yeah. They did everything for us. And then they were a couple small shops there right outside the base that, you would frequent because they had good food and they treated you like royalty. And we'd go there all the time. And they knew us on a first name basis. I even went to my first spa and massage, if you will. And it was a little short, 5'1" lady that weighed about 190 pounds. And I didn't realize it at the time, but, she said, "Oh, you go in here." So she pushed me in the sauna, and let me sweat for 10 minutes. And then she pulled me out, threw me on a board, of course, had a towel on me, but she beat the hell out of me. I mean, her hands were so strong and her fingers were so strong. For a little lady, I was like, oh, that hurts. And she kept telling me, it's okay. You feel better.
Yeah. She was taking out her frustrations.
Oh, man. It was almost like going to a chiropractor because afterwards I felt like $1 million.
Yeah.
And I got used to that. So like every week or so, when I wasn't in the field, I'd go see her. So we were on a first name basis. They even called me Ma. That was my Korean name, Ma Songsan, which is Ma, which is a horse, and I was a horse soldier. I don't ask me how they came up with that. Okay. I guess it's because of Manahan, M-A. They just Romanized that, so to speak. So,
gotcha.
Yeah. Now I have a question for you. Are you a connoisseur of kimchi?
Oh, yes. I'm not real wild about it because it gives me, indigestion. But I like bulgogi better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm glad you brought up kimchi because I was going to if you didn't. I have a love-hate thing with kimchi, but we'll move on from that. Is jjibang, is that the word for spa? Jjibang?
That sounds familiar.
I think that might be it.
Yeah.
The last thing about California, I went to Korean spa in L.A. one time.
Oh, did you?
I had a very similar experience with an aggressive lady.
They beat the crap out of you.
And I'll bet she was Korean, right?
Yes, she was. Oh, I remember. Okay, so another thing I wanted to ask Jim was, I'm guessing you're using the language while you're there a lot, even just casually.
The language.
Korean. You're using Korean while you're meeting these people and out on the streets.
Yes.
Okay.
The little bit of conversational English, I would try to be nice and respectful. And the funny thing is that most of the the Koreans around the base spoke English.
Really?
Yeah.
They probably wanted to practice their English more than hear your Korean.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
In fact, it was kind of comical because on the weekends, whenever I was on base, we would go out into town and go to these nightclubs or bars, if you will, and they love karaoke. Koreans just, I don't know what it is, if it's their culture or what, but they love karaoke. So we go in these bars, and you would always see Koreans up, singing American songs with a karaoke machine.
That's awesome.
I know. It was actually pretty neat. The songs they were singing were kind of cheesy, but
sure.
They were doing a pretty good job of voicing, the English language.
Probably a lot of love ballads, I would assume, right?
Oh, yeah. That was pretty awesome.
Tell us something that you have a really interesting perspective on. I want to make sure we talk about this because this is not well known, I don't think, anyway. Tell us about what's commonly known as either the Axe Incident or Operation Paul Bunyan.
Yeah, that was an unfortunate incident. In August of 1976, there was the joint service area was right around Panmunjom, which is the truce village, they call it. And inside that area, they had a contingent of Koreans and Americans that would patrol and more or less maintain the peace there. And the North Koreans on their side had the same thing. This was all within the 38th parallel, which is run across 160 miles across Korea,
Sure.
which they call a DMZ or demarcation line. Anyway, inside this area, they keep an eye on one another at these outposts with binoculars or whatever equipment they have. And they noticed this poplar tree. It was, I believe it was like 100 foot tall. And they couldn't see the outpost on the north side of Korea. So they got a group, these two American officers that were with the United Nations Command, Captain Boniface and First Lieutenant Barrett. And they took a group of Koreans and equipment, and they went over to where that tree was. And it was kind of like right in between the American and the North Korean side. And they started trimming it. And what they were trying to do is trim some of the limbs off so that they get a straight bird's eye view of the outpost. Well, apparently, as history or historical records show, they worked for like 15 minutes cutting these limbs. And the North Korean officer told them to stop. Captain Boniface turned around, looked at the officer, turned back at his workers, and told them to keep on going, keep trimming the tree. So they did. A few minutes later, the captain, North Korean captain, or the officer said, stop. He did the same thing. The North Korean officer took his handkerchief, put it in his pocket, said, kill them bastards. A whole load of North Korean soldiers with axe handles, axes, picks, crowbars, anything they had available, attacked Captain Boniface and killed him. Lieutenant Barrett ran across as far as he could go where there was a wall, jumped over the wall into some dense bush where he couldn't be seen. In the meantime, they loaded up Captain Boniface, his body on the truck, took him out of there, to defuse the situation. And the people at the other outposts, the American outposts that were watching all this, one guy was filming it and ran out of film. So at another outpost, they had film and they were filming it in black and white. And what happened is the North Koreans that had just killed Captain Boniface were looking for that other officer. So they looked over the wall, and apparently they saw him, and they jumped over and went down and killed him. And they did this several times. I mean, there were several soldiers that kept coming up, and then they would go back down. Somebody else would go back down. He was alive when the Americans finally got him out of there, but he died on the way to the hospital.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So anyway, this created pretty much an international incident. When this got reported to the high command, they said, okay, we're going to demand an apology from the North Koreans, and we're going to take appropriate action. So when they told the North Koreans, we demand an apology, they said no. Kim Il-sung, who was the dictator of North Korea at the time, said no, they didn't do anything wrong. The Americans were being aggressive. That wasn't true according to the film and whatnot.
Sure.
So this went on for 2 days, back and forth, bickering back and forth. Finally, I guess General Stilwell, I believe it is, was the commander of the joint services in Korea. He said, we're going to go over and we're going to cut that tree down. We're not going to trim it. We're going to cut it down. So he amassed Cobra attack helicopters, the B-52s. The Midway was stationed off the coast of Korea. That was brought into within firing range. They had, I don't know how many special operations soldiers from the South, some recon. I want to say there was like 800 Army soldiers. It was a tremendous show of force.
Yeah.
It scared the hell out of the North. They went over there. They had everything prepared. They had already put detonation charges on the bridge. It was called the Bridge of No Return. And they were going to blow that bridge if the North Koreans started coming across it.
Yeah.
So it was well planned out. The show of force was overwhelming, and the North Koreans backed down. Thank God, because otherwise we would have been at war.
And you would have been right there for it.
Yeah, because I remember, we were walking past the airfields, and the whole airfield was full of choppers, and we had never seen that the whole time we were there. So, yeah, we were gonna do it. I'm glad we didn't, because it could have turned into World War. But that was a harrowing experience. It was terrible.
That Officer Boniface, I think something had been named in his honor afterwards.
Yeah, Camp Kitty Hawk, who I had opportunity to go up to at one time, they renamed it Camp Boniface. But just as a side note, I did go up there with a friend of mine that was a fellow soldier, Korean, voice interceptor. And we were shown the capabilities of their starlight scopes. I don't know if that was new at the time or what, but I remember looking through the starlight scope, and you could see the North Koreans that were guarding their side of the DMZ. And I was like, it was like a culture shock to me, because they had gloves on that were only half of their hands, half of their fingers. Those earmuffs, the hats with the low earmuffs on them, just a regular shirt, long sleeve shirt. And it had to be 20 degrees with wind blowing. I mean, it was like they didn't have the clothes the appropriate clothing on. Here we had parkas on and Mickey Mouse boots.
Very well
and field.
Equipped.
Yeah, we were very well equipped, and they weren't. And we were watching them eating rice, and my friend, he got a hold of the starlight scope was on a post, and you could push buttons, and it had a rangefinder on it, so it would shoot a laser and then come back and tell you the distance in feet. So he was messing around with it and shooting lasers off of stuff. We saw all this activity going on in the North. All these soldiers were running around screaming and yelling. So, speaking of international incident, I told him, you're going to start an international incident just like the Paul Bunyan deal.
It's like getting a cat to run around in the house.
He was crazy. But, that was the worst part of Korea was that. I felt so bad for the soldiers that witnessed that.
This is a big question, and so I'm sort of sorry to put it on you. I have a Korean sister-in-law, and my brother lived in South Korea for quite some time. He was in Gwangju, and so I sort of have a kind of a personal stake in this. As best as you can, Jim, help us and our audience understand the, I guess, mentality of the South Korean versus the North Korean people. What is it that is keeping them from uniting?
I would say the North have instilled in their children at a very early age to hate Westerners. Europe, Americans, whatever. And, that follows them from the time they're old enough to read all the way up through high school, military, everything. So they have an extreme...
They're brainwashed.
Exactly. And it's terrible because, how do you change that mindset? The South, on the other hand, they are more welcoming, and they love democracy. They love the freedom, and they would love to see unite with the North. But some of the incidents that have taken place over the past, 50 years or whatever, I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, especially not when you have dictators that it was Kim Il-sung. Prior to him, it was his dad. And then now it's Kim Jong-un, who's the son of Kim Il-sung. And then his son will take over. And
they'll keep up the facade.
It will just keep going on. I don't know how to break that cycle. It's a shame.
Well, thank you for sharing your perspective on that. I know that it's of great interest to me, and I think it's of interest to a lot of people in the world who would like to see peace in that region. And, you know, there is a certain level of peace, but it's kind of an uneasy peace.
Right.
Waiting for the other shoe to drop, so to speak.
Yeah, very, very much so.
Yeah.
Real quick, Jim, I want to hear about your rappelling course.
Oh, yeah. I always volunteer for a lot of stuff. They asked if anybody wanted to go down to Jeju Island off the coast of South Korea and do a rappelling course. And, you know, me and a couple of my friends said, yeah, let's do it. And it was a blast. I mean, it was really fun. What was funny about it is after we did our, you know, jumping off the mountain, whatever, then we got a chance to go into the little towns. And these were small little towns, you know, didn't have much population. But the Koreans were so enamored with us. It was unbelievable. I mean, the little kids, they were riding bicycles. They had their school uniforms on and everything. And they were like, they would salute us. And these are like, you know, 8, 10 years old. And they're saluting us. It was just, I loved it. And then the girls, we went to a sweater factory where they make sweaters. And the little Korean girls were making sweaters. I shouldn't say little. They were probably teenagers. But they were just happy doing their work. And, you know, they're smiling at us and waving. And it was just, it was quite an experience, a cultural experience.
And so tell us about, well, I want to make sure we get into this. So your service in the Army ends in January 78. You have a brief period out of the service, and then you got back in briefly as well. Tell us about that.
Well, I got out in January, and I didn't really know what I was going to do. I had interviewed with the CIA. Or actually, I had sent them a letter, I'm sorry. At that time, I hadn't interviewed. I had an interview scheduled for, like, I believe it was March. And I was kind of counting on that, maybe get things rolling to start looking at a career. But after my interview, they said, you need to go back and get your bachelor's because they weren't hiring anybody with an associate degree.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I figured, here we go. I got 2 more years of this. So I kind of scratched that idea after my interview. So then I thought, well, I'll join the reserves and maybe, you know, network with some people, maybe find somebody that can give me some leads. So my first weekend, I was down there and they said, well, what can you do? I said, I don't know. You got any language speaking tapes you want me to listen to? You know, transcribe. They're like, no.
In St. Louis.
Yeah.
It's like, no, we don't have that here.
It was a psychological operation battalion, which, you know, wins the hearts and minds of the enemy.
Right.
And they said, well, what qualifications do you have? I said, well, I've qualified expert on M60 machine gun. Then you know how to clean them. I said, yes, I do. So I spent, you know, all weekend cleaning M60 machine guns.
Oh, boy.
So I did some thought, you know, serious, gave it some serious thought after that. So I thought I'll give them another drill. So the next month, went on a drill. We were out at Weldon Springs doing ranger duty. I mean, they gave us compasses, and they said, you know, find these marks, you know,
land
on a map.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is not what I was trained for. So I talked to my CO, and I said, listen, I said, I don't have a problem with the military. I love it. You can see my record and whatnot. I'd like to go somewhere I can utilize my skills. He said, well, have you checked with anybody? I said, I checked with the Marines, and they don't have an intelligence outfit. He goes,
that's a no-brainer, no pun intended.
It's a bit cruel.
He said, check with the Navy. He said, I think they got some stuff going on over at Lambert Field. So I contacted the Navy, and they welcomed me with open arms. They said, "Yeah, come on, we got place in the basement, secure. You can listen to tapes, transcribe them. It's pretty much what you did before.
Yeah,
in a secure environment." So I really enjoyed it. And had it not been, if I would have been married and starting a family, I think I would have been career military.
I was going to ask what it is that just made you decide to get out. That's
the only reason. And my wife, when I was up in Seattle or Tacoma at Fort Lewis, she said, I really don't want you to be going back to Korea and me not being able to go and you traveling all the time. She goes, "Why don't we just go back home?" I said, "Okay." Happy wife, happy life.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what'd you do for when you got out?
I finally went to the VA's employment office in St. Anne, and they had a job. They said, "I know this isn't, what you're trained in, but it's a ground floor opportunity. Maybe something will come of it. Maybe it won't." So I started out as a production operator at a chemical company in Maryland Heights. I, did that for a while, worked my way into quality control, worked my way into supervision, worked my way into safety. And while I was working, I was going back to school at St. Louis U. And when I graduated, they made me permanent supervisor. And then the opportunities started opening up for middle management positions. And then they closed in 94, and then I bounced around a couple different chemical companies. And that's how I ended my career as a middle manager at a chemical distribution company.
I hope you don't mind me asking this, Jim, but since we talked about it earlier, I think it'd be a nice note to end on. What did your dad think of your military career? Did he get to see all of it?
He died in 83 or 82 before I graduated from SLU.
Okay.
That sucked.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Because I was the only one of the family out of 7 that had a college education.
Sure.
So he didn't get to see it, but he knew that I did good.
Yeah.
He used to come to my work in Maryland Heights, and he was like, I was working in production at the time, and he goes, he kept wanting more out of me. He goes, "You're better than this. You can do better than this." I said, I'm trying. I'm working my way into other positions, and it finally panned out.
He was ever the encourager.
Yeah, he was. He wanted one of his kids to be college educated.
Hey, it happened.
And he got it.
He did. Yeah, right. It did.
Well, any last stories or anything that you want to talk about before we end the show today?
I don't know. I guess one of the most fitting things I could mention is the friendships that I gained in the military. Several of them who I contacted after the military and came and actually one of them lived with me for a while he was trying to get on his feet. And he ultimately became a doctor, emergency room doctor. So I still talk to him. I just talked to him the other day. One of them was Special Forces, career Special Forces. He was in Somalia at Black Hawk Down.
Wow.
Survived, and he lives in Italy. Another one, unfortunately, the one I told you about that was with the Starlight Scope was bouncing the laser off everything, freaking out the North Koreans. He had some inner demons. He committed suicide.
How did that affect you when you found out the news?
Oh, I was floored.
Yeah.
He was at my house several times.
Wow.
I mean, he was from Boston, actually, Cape Cod. And the last thing, when I talked to him, we had bet on the Cardinals versus Boston Red Sox.
Sure.
I don't remember when that was. Was it
04 was the first time? Yeah.
Is that about right?
Whenever it was, they beat us 4 games straight.
Yeah, I think it was 4. Yeah.
So I owed him $100. And there was no indication on the phone that anything was wrong.
I was going to ask that, yeah.
I didn't see the signs. My buddy that was Special Forces called me, and he's the one that told me. And he said, he said his wife was telling me things I did not know about him. And he said, I feel terrible that I didn't see the signs. But apparently it was drug related. Mm. Who knows? I mean,
yeah.
Terrible. Good friend, really good friend. I've got pictures of me and him in Korea. He was in the rappelling course with me. And he's the one, I don't know if I told you, he was practical joker. So he would go up to Koreans. He was like 6'5", 250 pounds, muscle.
Yeah.
And he would lunge at them. And they're typically smaller people,
sure.
It was like a monster to charge them.
They'd probably never seen anybody like that before.
Yeah. And he was joking, that was how he was. He was just funny. He'd try to scare people, and then he'd go, and they'd laugh. But, that hit me pretty hard.
I can only imagine, yeah.
I hadn't had anybody that died
that was your first experience with suicide personally.
Yeah.
I'm no expert in this. I don't think it does any good to second guess your actions or what you did or didn't notice. For me, I enjoy hearing the positive stories and the fun memories. As hard as it is to know that someone had those inner demons, especially if it's drug related, in my experience, that gets hid really, really well because they have to as part of their survival.
On purpose, yeah.
On purpose. It's a very sad thing. But I'm pleased to hear your stories that you remember well of that individual, that friend of yours.
Yeah.
And I would encourage you to keep those.
It's a tribute to him.
Sure, exactly.
And my family knew. He took my son on his shoulders running through the zoo because he was crying, and we were trying to get him to stop crying when he was a little toddler, 1 or 2 years old. And still have pictures of that and great memories of that. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that individual story.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And thank you for sharing your story, Jim. Really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
you being here and you being willing to tell us. And I had a lot of fun with this interview,
Me too.
Jason.
Me too.
I like Jim a lot.
I like Jim a lot, and you come from a long line of military prowess, history, heroes, and we talked earlier before the show, and we hear a lot that people say, I didn't do anything, or I'm not a hero, but that's, in my book, anybody who signs on the dotted line's a hero, and that blank check gets cashed sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. You know what I mean? But sounds like you had a wonderful, you still have a wonderful family, great friendships, great experiences, and we appreciate you sharing it with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And we're going to go ahead and sign off of the Operation Insight podcast from the Mid-America Veterans Museum. Operation Insight is brought to you by the Mid-America Veterans Museum. The museum is a 501c3 nonprofit business. Do you like our podcast? With your support, we'll continue to bring you great programming. If you'd like to donate, go to mavm.org and click on Donate.